Panoramic landscape photography. For some photographers, it's synonymous with the hard work in the field and at the computer. For others, it's an opportunity to capture notorious places differently with a fresh perspective, or simply to have absolute compositional freedom regardless of the lenses we own. Whether you belong to the first or second group of photographers, let's try to learn together, step by step, how to capture panoramic photos. Hello, I'm Jan Smid, a master qualified European photographer. With over 13 years of experience, I lead photography workshops. As one of 25 ambassadors for Carl Zeiss, I co-produce this channel with colleagues Pavel and Martin, fellow expedition lecturers. Let's start with a definition of what panoramic photography actually is. Panoramic photography is most commonly considered a photo that is created by stitching individual photos into one, resulting in a panoramic format. This means that one side is significantly longer than the other, typically in a ratio of 3:1 or more. Personally, I lean towards a simpler definition. Specifically, I consider a panoramic photograph to be one that is created by combining at least two individual photos side by side or above each other, regardless of the resulting format. In addition to the definition of panoramic photography, in professional literature, we can find three basic methods to achieve panoramic photographs. First, cropping a photo of a standard format to a panoramic one. Second, using a special panoramic camera. Third, capturing a scene in parts and merging the photos into one panoramic composition. The first method, cropping a standard single shot into a panoramic format, cannot be considered true panoramic photography. Only the resulting format may evoke the impression of panoramic photography. However, this method is entirely incorrect. Firstly, because the photo needs cutting, the composition will be changed significantly. Secondly, the loss of data will ruin the quality of the photography. How can a single shot cropped into a panoramic photography look? Usually it is compositionally very unbalanced. For example, like this. The second method, using a special panoramic camera, is very rare. There are two reasons for this. Both panoramic cameras and working with them are very specific. Personally, I know only one photographer who uses a panoramic camera for special projects. As we have already mentioned, these cameras are truly unconventional. Take a look for yourself. The third method, capturing a composition in parts and merging them into a panorama, is the most common and also the most effective way. We will continue to focus on this method. Before we learn how to capture panoramic photos in practice, let's discuss two more theoretical notes. Firstly, the resulting format of panoramic photography. We can have horizontal panoramas, vertical panoramas, and also square panoramas. And one more theoretical note, as we promised a moment ago, namely the answer to the question of why take panoramic photos. There are three reasons for this. We'll start with the least essential one, which is the high resolution of the final photo. It must be said that this reason was important maybe 10 years ago, when a resolution of 12 megapixels was considered incredible. In today's era, with full-frame cameras attacking resolutions of 100 megapixels, this reason is truly insignificant. However, there are two other absolutely fundamental reasons. Firstly, the effort to capture a notoriously known composition differently in a new and other way. We have already discussed this in one of the previous videos, specifically in this one titled How to Take Unique Photos of a Notorious Landscape. You can find a link to this video in the description below. And the second fundamental reason is absolute compositional freedom, regardless of the lenses we have. A specific example, we have the widest lens with a 100-degree field of view. Well, but we like the composition with a 160-degree field of view. So what we will do? If we can't, or if we don't want to capture a panorama, then we have no choice but to take a single shot with a 100-degree field of view and reconcile ourselves with the fact that it's not the ideal photo we wanted. Or we take a panoramic photo without compromises and bring home exactly the composition we like during shooting. But enough of the boring theory. Let's move on to the part of the video that most of you are waiting for. So how to practically take panoramic photos and what equipment do we need? The first good news. Were you afraid that you have to buy a panoramic head? Wrong, you don't have to. You will save money and space in your camera bag. To take panoramic landscape photos, we need the following equipment. Firstly, a tripod. Ideally, a sturdy one to avoid any movement even in wind. We also need a tripod head that allows panoramic movement. Fortunately, almost all heads have this feature today, except for the very basic ones. By the way, what is this panoramic movement? Is it? In other words, the ability to rotate around an axis. And then we only need the camera and any lens, since we can shoot panoramas with a focal length of 15mm to 600mm. Yes, this is really the most basic equipment. However, there are a few small things that will significantly help us, and they come with only a minor cost. If you have already tried to shoot a panorama with the above described equipment, you have probably encountered a problem sooner or later. If we have tried to shoot a panorama and had something prominent in the foreground, like a tree, rocks, etc., what happened? When combining the photos into a panorama, stitching errors occurred. Typically, various seams, parts of the photos didn't match, and so on. And that's due to the parallax error. But what is it? Simply said, it's a geometric error in the image. It arises from the rotation of the camera during panoramic photography around the wrong point. The correct point around which the optical system of the camera and lens must rotate during photography is the nodal point. Okay, but how do we find it? It's quite easy. The nodal point is always on the lens axis and is located approximately in the area in front of the lens. Some lenses have golden or red stripes that mark the nodal point. Just remember that the nodal point is at the front end of the lens. If we wanted to shoot architecture, for example interiors, we would necessarily need a panoramic head. And we would also have to find the nodal point very precisely. For landscape photography, we have more than enough to know that it's simply at the end of the lens. Okay, so we know where it is. But how to use this information in practice? Let's take a look. If I'm rotating the camera directly in the head without any additional equipment, what happens? The camera almost stays in place, but the front element of the lens describes a large trajectory. In other words, it rotates back and forth, but we need the exact opposite. We need the camera to rotate, but the lens to stay in place as much as possible. And here is the solution, simply by the so-called nodal rails. Here they are. Simply attach them to the tripod head and mount the camera on the rails. Now move the camera with the lens back so that the front element of the lens is roughly in the center of the head. And now let's see how the camera and the lens will rotate. The lens, compared to the previous rotation, stays almost in place and describes only a small trajectory. On the other hand, the camera now describes a larger trajectory and rotates back and forth. This solution actually creates a semi-panoramic head with movement in one axis. We don't need anything more. We don't need large and heavy panoramic heads. Just these rails will be enough. The result of using these rails will be precisely composed panoramas without errors or seams. Simple, isn't it? But that's not all. Right now, at this point, we can say that the overwhelming majority of panoramas are shot with a vertically oriented camera. It makes sense. We want the resulting format not to be a narrow strip. If we have the camera horizontally, such a strip will be created. Moreover, most likely without foreground. So we will have to unnecessarily make two rows. On the other hand, with a vertically oriented camera, often only one row will be sufficient. Okay, but how to turn the camera vertically? Simply and quickly without tilting it off the tripod axis? For this, all we need is the so-called L bracket. It's nothing more than a classic tripod plate. Only it's not just on the bottom of the camera, but also on the side. Thanks to this, we can easily turn the camera vertically and still be in line with the tripod. Again, a simple solution and for a few dollars. Many companies manufacture these L brackets today, just pick the one you like. There are two more notes regarding to L bracket. Choose an L bracket that allows you to attach a cable release. This is often solved by extending a part of the L bracket further to the side, creating space for the cable release. I will show you. Okay. Manufacturers of photo accessories are now coming up with a revolutionary solution. We can call it the O bracket. It's not about a plate from the bottom and the side of the camera. It's a ring that has one crucial advantage. It allows the camera to remain perfectly manageable. It doesn't obstruct anything like L bracket. Essentially, whether you choose an L bracket or O bracket, it depends on your preference. Great, so we have addressed the parallax error and achieved efficient camera rotation in the axis of the tripod. Is there anything missing? Yes, there is. Namely, if we want to capture panorama, it is absolutely, really essential for the tripod to be level. And by level, I don't mean just adjusting the camera on the head. The tripod legs must be in the same plane. Let's pay attention to that. Why? Imagine the tripod is not level and we align everything on the head. What happens during panoramic shooting? If the tripod is not level, the camera will drift during the panorama movement. The result will be the so-called steps between individual photos. And in the final stitching, we will lack data for those photos. The only solution would be to crop the entire panorama, and we definitely don't want that. So first we need to level the tripod legs. A bubble level on the tripod serves this purpose. It's here. Fortunately, most tripods have a bubble level. If not, we have the option to purchase a bubble level and attach it to the tripod if we find a flat surface. But there is a better solution. It's called a leveler or leveling base. It looks like this. As you can see, it is placed between the tripod and head. This leveler helps align the plane if the tripod is not level. It's very simple and it's done. The leveling base is a handy tool. It's practical and quick. While someone is still adjusting the legs based on the bubble level, with a leveler will be leveled in 2 seconds and ready to shoot. Leveling bases are produced by many brands today. It is ideal to choose it based on the tilt angle. Good ones offer a tilt angle of up to 15 degrees. So let's summarize. For shooting panoramic photos, we need a tripod, a head, ideally an L bracket or O bracket. The nodal rails and a leveling base can come in handy. Any bracket, slider and leveler will cost us hardly 20% of a quality panoramic head. Yet with this equipment we will have more than enough for 3 or 4 or how many raw panoramas we want, 100 degrees, 300 degrees, simply no limitations. And that's all for today, friends. We have talked about what panorama is, the ways to capture it, and the equipment needed. In the next video, we will discuss the basic rules for shooting single and multi-row panoramic photos. And of course, there will be a practical demonstration. Did you like today's video? Then we would appreciate if you give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. See you soon.